Welcome to Sly Media TV and welcome to this episode of our programs that we bring you every now and then, where we talk about everything that's happening in our communities, politics, we talk about economics and even social issues that are taking place in our environments. So we are going to be discussing with the deputy spokesperson of the CCC, an opposition political party in the country, and his name is Gift Ostallos. You know him, no need to introduce him. We are going to be talking about a lot of issues that are happening within the political party, within the body politic of the country, and to understand what's happening as we are going into 2023. Welcome to Sly Media TV, my brother, and welcome to this program.
Thank you very much.
So, Ostallos, let's start with the news or issues around the denied access of Nelson Chamisa to visit Sikhala and the other incarcerated party supporters. What would you say with regards to that?
Thank you very much. It's a clear sign that we are fighting a fascist government which does not recognize the existence of the law in this country. We have slided back to a de facto one-party state dominated and controlled by Mr. Mnangagwa himself without popular mandate. The president has a right to see incarcerated comrades. First and foremost, our point of departure is on the fact that these champions are not supposed to be in prison in the first place because they are victims. But what we see as we head towards 2023 election is the fact that victims are being treated as perpetrators, while these perpetrators, well-known ZANU-PF members, are walking scot-free. That's why these comrades are in prison. But secondly, and most importantly, is the mere fact that they've got a right to access legal practitioners of their choice as prescribed by the law. Advocate Nelson Chamisa is not just the president of the Citizens Coalition for Change, but he's also a legal practitioner who's supposed to produce a practicing certificate so that he access any prisoner that he wants to provide legal services to. So all this was not respected by the Zimbabwe Prison Services, who made a clear indication that President Chamisa is a high-profile politician and must have a clearance from the Commissioner General of the Police, which is not the norm in terms of prison protocols and processes. But it's also revealing how ZANU-PF at this juncture also recognizes the influence and the legitimacy that President Chamisa holds as a citizens leader and a champion of democracy in our country. That's why they say, no, you're a high-profile politician and you have to go through the Commissioner General for you to come here. So that's why we're engaging the Commissioner General of the Prison Services so that we find out of this law, because there is no existing law that prescribes to that. That is our point of worry. But we are seeing this as we head towards election. It's clear that the state is going after all the pro-democracy players in this country, not just members of the Citizens Coalition for Change, but also activists, media practitioners, lawyers, doctors, everyone not spared. Just today we're having a strike by teachers, and we know that they're going to be going after teachers, not just in terms of his leadership, but also other teachers who are perceived to be organizing people towards this particular resistance to autocracy.
In the engagements that you are having with the Commissioner General, have you already started the process, and what is happening at the moment?
For now, remember, we're preoccupied. The presidency was preoccupied by the charges that were laying against a ZANU-PF member who incited violence and incited death threats to the person of the president. So the presidency is preoccupied by that process, whose legal representative is Beatrice Mutetwa, to make sure that we bring justice to these particular threats. We don't take them lightly. No one takes them lightly, these threats to the life of a president, but just that a citizen of this country can threaten someone with impunity. Honorable Sikhala is in prison for the same charges that you incited public violence. But he is a well-known ZANU-PF person who threatens not just violence, but threatens life a death threat to a citizen of this country, something that we don't take lightly. That's why we're engaging also with our regional and continental players to resolve this surging of political violence and state-sponsored violence as we head towards 2023 elections.
Have you already started engaging the regional blocks, regional organizations to deal with this matter?
Definitely, we have written to SADC and we have been informed that they're going to be having a summit, which we are also going to be engaging with other partners in the region. And of course, the African Union, we have written to Addis Ababa to make sure that we resolve this issue, particularly in and around a dialogue on reforms. We believe that the elections in this country have been marred by not just violence, but also electoral manipulation, the abuse of state institutions like the military and the police to work on behalf of a political player, in this case ZANU-PF. So we believe that SADC and the African Union are key players to assist us in pushing that envelope of having reforms in our country so that we end this successive disputed election cycle which has been in the political scene since post-independence Zimbabwe 1980. We believe that once we resolve this, our country is going to be able to handle the governance crisis. We believe that the economic crisis facing our people is born out of disputed election because we've got a contested authority. Mnangagwa doesn't have the legitimacy from ordinary people. Therefore, when a government is contested, it means there is no social contract, there is no trust, there is no relationship between those who govern and those that are being governed. So at the center of the socio-economic quagmire facing our people is the governance question, born out of illegitimacy because of stolen election. So we have to end this. We end this by having a conversations on minimum reform. So we're going to be unveiling our blueprint called Prepare, which is basically conditions for elections, where we basically have 7 minimum demands on reforms, which obviously touch around media reforms, the independence of ZEC. If you see the recent low turnout of people in the voters' roll inspection, is because there's a contested legitimacy issue on the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. The people of Zimbabwe don't have confidence on ZEC's fidelity to the constitution. So people don't trust electoral processes. So we have to restore that confidence by making sure that processes that happen to produce commissioners, processes that happen to produce electoral outcome by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission are at least passing the credibility test. We believe that ZEC must pass the credibility test, must pass the transparency test, the professional test. In that way, Zimbabweans are going to have confidence on the commission, thereby giving credibility to electoral processes and electoral outcomes.
Speaking of reforms, we know that at some point when he was still within ZANU-PF, Professor Jonathan Moyo said ZANU-PF was not going to reform itself out of power. Do you think with the push that you are giving to ZANU-PF to say we need electoral reforms, we need media reforms, we need security reforms, do you think that these are going to happen when ZANU-PF has that mentality to say we're not going to reform out of power?
Of course, it is not in the interest of Mr. Mnangagwa to have reforms, as has been said by other people. It's not in the interest of ZANU-PF to us to have reform, but we have said in the interest of democracy. That's why we're engaging other people, because we don't think that ZANU-PF has got the political will for obvious reasons. The obvious reason is that they want power retention and accumulation of the same. So we have to engage people who are able to assist us to push that envelope. Because for us, it's not about political parties, it's not about politicians, it's about stability, it's about democracy, it's about development, it's about human progress. So we do this for the betterment of our future and the future of our children. That's why we are very clear on those demands. And we think that engaging regional players, engaging Zimbabweans in particular on this particular conversation is going to be a key issue so that we end this. Because we must be able to resolve the pre-electoral problems so that the election process at the end of it is not disputed. Once we do that, we are obviously going to resolve a number of issues that I've talked about, because we'll be having a legitimate leaders born out of the collective. Remember, these things are also what was at the center of the liberation project. Universal suffrage, as was articulated succinctly with the liberation generation, was about one man, one vote. One man, one vote is about democracy. One man, one vote is about the sanctity of the right to vote, so that people choose the leadership of their choice. So that's the envelope that we are pushing. We are directly locating the Citizens Coalition at the central objective of the liberation project in our country.
And so far, the engagements that you have made with ZEC, with other players, have there been any concessions made with regards to reforms?
There have been conversations. ZEC has requested us to write to them. We're going to share that letter that we're writing to the Commission around issues of our allegations of electoral malpractices on the part of the Commission. So we are going to be also sharing that with the court of the public opinion. But also we have said very clear that we are entering into the shadows of the next election. And our demand for reform is not just going to be around us having boardroom conversations. We are also going to invoke Section 59 of the Zimbabwean Constitution and use the streets as the point of entry to demand reforms. So it's not going to be an easy path, not just for ourselves, but also for ZANU-PF itself in our demand for reforms.
When you say use the streets, what are you talking about? Are these going to be, are we going to see people on the streets demonstrating, demanding what you are calling reforms?
As I've said, if these avenues that we are using do not yield any positive results for the pro-democracy movement, we are going to invoke Section 59 of the Zimbabwean Constitution and use the streets as a point of entry in our quest and demand for reforms.
Now, it sounds like the 2023 election is already disputed from the point of view of reforms, because clearly on the other side you have a political party that says no to reforms, the other one is saying let's have reforms. There is a dispute already. How are you going to be dealing with this as we are going into 2023?
You see, it's a delicate political balance that we need to strike as the people of Zimbabwe. If you see the elections that we've held, I was in Chipinge, deployed by the citizens movement to go and monitor and assist our champions in the campaign in Chipinge. And what you saw are that there were difficulties. One of the most things that we give as a report is patronage, ZANU's abuse of state institutions and food, weaponization of the same in order to try and cajole people into voting for ZANU-PF. The second issue was obviously use of fear, harvest of fear and intimidation as obviously the tool of mobilization by ZANU, because they failed to push the envelope of hope, the envelope of development. They are selling fear to the people of Zimbabwe. So those are also problems in a pre-electoral environment. But we remained and emerged victorious. We saw the same in Kariba, that ZANU, the pre-electoral environment was not favorable, was not fair for all the political contestants, but we managed to win. So this is the nature. We pushed the envelope of reform, we pushed the envelope of democracy, but we also engaged to make sure that we close all these gaps. So there's going to be a multifaceted strategic intervention to make sure that we protect the victory of the people of Zimbabwe, because Zimbabweans cannot afford, they might not express it subtly for different reasons, but talk to the middle class, talk to business people, talk to ordinary people, talk to vendors, talk to teachers, talk to doctors, talk to Zimbabweans in diaspora, talk to ZANU-PF civilian authority in ZANU-PF itself, talk to state bureaucrats, talk to the securocrats. The collective consensus is that Mr. Mnangagwa has failed. The collective national consensus is that we cannot afford another 5 years under ZANU-PF, in particular under Mr. Mnangagwa. So there is a national consensus. So what must happen, our responsibility as the political leadership, is to make sure that we push and have all the strategic intervention so that we protect our victory, we protect the victory of ordinary people. It's going to take a collective effort of political parties, labor movements, students' union, workers, political players, everyone, to make sure that we bring change, because change that is coming is not change for CCC, it's change for Zimbabwean people. It works for the vendor, it works for teachers, it works for ZANU-PF. When there's change in this country, even ZANU-PF people are going to get a salary above poverty that timeline. Even ZANU-PF employees are going to have a living better than the dogs of the rich. So the struggle for democracy is not for the benefit of a sectarian section of society, but it's for the benefit of every Zimbabwean, regardless of their race, regardless of their tribe, regardless of their age, regardless of their ethnic belonging. So it's a change and transformation for every Zimbabwean.
Let's talk about what's happening, trending on Twitter these days, is that there are issues around CCC being structureless. And there is quite a number of issues that are being raised with regards to that. What would you say? Do you think that this affects you as a political movement, as a political party, that you do not have structures at the moment? Or are you even considering having those structures?
Thank you very much. I think it's an exhausted conversation, but it remains evergreen, because there are some who are pushing it for political reasons. But our response is very simple. I think that the question is framed wrongly. I think that they should ask who is in your structures. When they ask us that question, we ask them, why do you want to know them? Because that's where the discourse is. They don't want to know whether we have structures or not. They want to know who is in our structure. And our question is, why do you want to know them? Because we are organizing the movement. I told you, I addressed more than 2,000 people in rural Chipinge. They were organized, mobilized, and deployed by the movement. We remained victorious in that by-election. It's clear, it's no-brainer. There's an infrastructure running the citizens' movement. But the question is, they want to know who is in our structure. And it's for obvious reason. Detectors, they function on simple strategies. Divide and rule, manipulate structures, manipulate individuals. So they want to know who is doing what. We know each other. The democratic alternative in terms of its function, form, and character. This is a new movement, and we are forming it and building a broad social base from below. We don't rush to create a leadership at the top. You don't rush to create, because we have lessons from our engagement with the pro-democracy movement. And one of our greatest lessons of our existing in different movements that we were before is the mere fact that you don't want an institution that is stronger at the top and weak below. So we must build the institution and build the movement from below. Once the movement is a social base, it is stronger there. You can be able to have conversations about elite deployment to strategic sectors for the purpose of running the movement. But we are clear, we know each other. There is no confusion in the rank and file of the citizens movement. This is a broad movement, it's a movement for everyone. We accept criticism because part and parcel of the beauty of democracy is that people must be able to exchange ideas. So I don't think that those who question must be dismissed. They have legitimate reasons to question, so we have legitimate reasons to respond in the manner that we have done. And we think that's the beauty of democracy.
Now let's talk about the logo, the party logo. We have seen a new logo. Maybe it's not new, but we have seen a different one from the one that you published when you launched the party. The one that has a face of Nelson Chamisa, and the other one that doesn't have. Talk to us about that. What is the difference?
Okay, firstly, we have not launched the citizens movement. We announced our entry into the political landscape in this country as a contesting political party and of course as an alternative government. We are going to launch the movement, and when we launch the movement is when we are also going to put all our blueprints and all our processes to be done for the benefit of those who want to know how we are going to be doing things as an alternative government. But what we have done at the present moment is that we have made public our logo. The logo's purpose is for our official correspondence. When we write to other political parties in the region, when we write to other governments in the region, we've just been having conversation with other government. The president has been having a conversation at the diplomatic level with other presidents, and follow-up conversations must be done through correspondence. So when we write those letters, we use the official logo of the organization. And once we do that, when we go to political rallies and political programs, particularly for the purpose of our participation in the 2023 election, we are going to be using our logo, but as an election symbol with the face of our presidential candidate. So there are two things which are distinct. The logo is used officially for the correspondence of the organization, and then the party symbol is one that appears on the ballot box, is one that appears on our party regalia and everything that is around electioneering. that is around our electrocentric approach to our politics. But everything that has to do with the professional engagement and correspondence of the organization is done with the official logo of the organization. That has been the tradition of the pro-democracy movement. That on one hand there is a party logo, and on the other hand, of course, there is a symbol. So there is not going to be any confusion. Those who are going to be voting for us in the next election, they are going to see, for example, we've got an election in Gogo Kabuyuni. So you will see our party symbol. It is our current presidential candidate, and in this case, it is Advocate Nelson Chamisa, our champion-in-chief.
Lastly, let's talk about prospects going into 2023. Obviously, we have seen in some pockets of the country where we see violence, electoral violence. So what we want to know from you, when you cast your eyes into 2023, what do you think is going to be the environment? Do you think that we are going to see a fairly non-violent environment, or we are going to see serious violence?
Look, it's obvious. ZANU-PF is in 6s and 7 because of the revelations and the political climate in our country, which is predicting scientifically and qualitatively so that President Chamisa is going to win the next election. And this is not just based on our own surveys. It's also based on some academic researches. You see, the recent Afrobarometer survey has predicted that the opposition and the alternative government, as led by Nelson Chamisa, is having its support surging, and ZANU-PF is support dwindling for obvious political reasons. So it is no-brainer. It's clear that ZANU is going to invoke its last tool on the shelf, which is the tool of violence. We have seen them. They've started with the utterances, very arrogant, very violent, spewing vitriol. We have seen their communications platforms. They use fear, they use intimidation, rogue and uncensored language. It is a clear sign of a desperate regime that is on its exit. And we know that it's going to get darker before dawn comes in, and we are prepared for that. That's why we are deploying our peace ambassadors across the entire country so that we protect communities. We think that the regime is going to try and push us in the corner of violence. We urge our people not to be tempted into the arena of violence for obvious reasons. It is the regime's competence, and they want to use that. Our power is on the ballot. That's why we're urging young people to vote. This election is going to be about a generation of young people who have never used an ATM, who have never been employed, who woke up at the blessing of an empty stomach and a jobless existence to decide their future. So the future of this country is on the ballot. The future of democracy in this country is on the ballot. The future of development in this country is going to be on the ballot. So that's why we're urging our people that against all the apathetic narratives designed by the regime to deter our people from exercising their right, we continuously and unequivocally urge people across the entire parts of our country to prepare to make sure that we bring down dictatorship by the power of the ballot. That is our ammunition. We must register in numbers, particularly our own generation. We have never seen a functional country. We have normalized the abnormal. So we have the opportunity to resolve this in the 2018 election and 2023 election, and we can only do that if we are registered voters. Once we do that, there's going to be change in this country. Once we do that, there's stability. Once we do that, there's economic development. So we are prepared for everything. Of course, our youth forces are also preparing for making sure that communities are protected. We're not going to be obviously sitting idle and being on the receiving end of violence. We know how to protect ourselves, and our message is very clear to ZANU-PF and all the headmasters of chaos. It's not going to be an easy pack, an easy walk in the park to invoke the envelope of violence. We remain peaceful, we remain non-violent. We pitch the envelope of hope. We believe that hope has power over fear. We believe that peace has power over violence. We believe that violence begets violence. We urge our people to remain peaceful, but we know that is going to be a tough one, but we keep pushing with the person of our president, and they've got absolute trust on his capacity to deliver change and transformation. It is out of these realities that we are very clear and precise that we are going to win the next election and win big. Once we win big, we are obviously going to unpack our program of action to change the concrete lives of the suffering masses of our people.
Let's talk about numbers, percentages maybe.
I might not be able to give percentages, but I'm sure without any shadow of a doubt that we are going to win with a huge margin, particularly on the presidential plebiscite.
Thank you so much, Ostallos. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, my brother. Have a good one.
Gift Ostallos Ziva, the deputy spokesperson of the CCC. We were talking about issues that are happening in the country's body polity, and to say what is it that we need to expect as citizens going into 2023, and what is on their dashboard as a political movement as we are going into the general elections in 2023. Stay tuned to Sly Media TV for these and more programs. My name is Perfect Longwane. Have a good day.